Hello and good morning. This is Mr. Happy here with Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn 101. And this time we're going to do it on your stats. Now, I actually got a request for this when I woke up this morning, because I actually did decide to sleep. But I was going to do this video anyway, so now it just means it has a little bit more meaning. I want to make this a quick one, so let me just say really quick, this is not in any way a breach of the non-disclosure agreement set in place currently for Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, and we are not allowed to show audio video, so I will be using screenshots to show you what each of the stats do. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Let's just not even waste a single bit of time. Just so you know, a Logitech camera thing is going to pop up in the middle of nowhere for the middle of this video, so I'm just going to cover the basics while that happens. As you can see here, you have your character main, you have attributes, profile, classes, currency, you have your gear sets, which we'll get into later, you have each individual pieces of gear. Also, as you can see here in the release version, there will be a silhouette displayed here that will be replaced with a 3D model, so you can actually see the gear on your character. And then you have all your stats. You have, there it is, let's get that out of the way. There you go, yeah, you have your HP, your MP, and your TP. HP is your health. If it hits 0, you die. MP is your magic resource, so casters use this to cast their spells. And I believe most spells are based on your base MP before you have any gear that gives you MP. But I'll have to test that a little bit further. And TP is your physical resource, so physical damage dealers use this, and magic users do have a use for it, especially in their sprint button, which is very, very helpful. But other than that, it's just your simple resource that it regenerates over time, and you have to manage it pretty carefully as melee. So, but those are pretty basic. Most people seem to know how those work. So let's jump right into the actual attributes: strength, dexterity, vitality, int, mind, and piety. Now, the game has very gladly separated them, as you can see. They're color coded to say these are melee stats, these are caster stats, and it's decently done, so you know that these stats will never affect something that your character wants to do if you're a certain class. But within those three stats, there is balancing that needs to be done. Now, strength is usually is a given. Any melee person needs this. It is their damage dealing source. Increases your physical attack power. Now, that's pretty much given for strength. People expect physical attacks to scale with strength, and they do. Excuse me there. And but strength also has some tanking properties to it. It increases how much damage you mitigate when you block or parry. So when you block an attack, you might notice from previous Final Fantasies, especially Final Fantasy XI, you don't necessarily mitigate all the damage. With the more strength you have, the more damage you will mitigate. So this is blocking or parrying, so this isn't just a tank stat. All melee classes really get something out of this stat, because we know when you're soloing, it very much helps to parry, and the more damage that you parry, the better. You know, you can't complain, right? Moving on, you have dexterity. Now, dexterity is really a stat that I heard it go off, so don't worry, I'm saving this one. Uh, a sigh of relief, not relief, but you know. So anyway, dexterity is really underappreciated because it only increases, well, it doesn't only, but it increases ranged attack power. Now, there's only one class in the game that can use that right now, and that's Archer and Bard. You know, that class job combination, the only ones that can make use of it right now. However, it does also increase the rate at which you parry. So it's not completely useless for all the other classes. The more dexterity you have, the more often you will parry, which is useful. You know, the more often you parry, again, the more damage you mitigate. So tanks could definitely get a little bit of use out of having some strength and dex. However, the big stat, and this one's pretty simple, is vitality. Gives you more HP. If you need more HP, you get more vitality, and that's pretty much a main tanking stat right there. All of your passives will be enhanced vitality. You will have a lot of them, and you will get a lot more health from them. And that's what really gives you the edge, are those passives. The enhanced vitality is a massive passive for any class that does have it. And no, I did not mean to rhyme there. Moving on, those are the melee stats. Pretty simple. The caster stats aren't much more complicated. You have intelligence, mind, and piety. Intelligence increases the damage your spells do. So if you're a thaumaturge, or even if you're a conjurer looking to get a little bit extra damage, intelligence helps. Mind increases how much healing you do, so this is really Conjurer and Scholar kind of thing. Conjurer and White Mage Scholar, you all need a lot of mind to increase how much your heals do. And finally, you have Piety, which increases your maximum MP. It's basically the vitality stat of the casters, and you kind of have to kind of weave it in there with all of your casters to get more MP, especially if MP costs are only based off your base MP. I don't know if that includes the bonus stats that you get from Piety, but I'll have to test it and we'll see how it goes on from there. But more MP is always a good thing. You know, you can't complain there. And I can only assume that having more MP is very much gonna get you more spells if it's based off base MP. It just makes more sense if you ask me. Very basic stats. I'm not going to waste much more time on them. I think you can pretty much figure out where they belong based on what I've said. So let's move on. Next, you have elemental resistances. You have fire, ice, wind, earth, water, lightning. As you can see here, they're slightly different. If you're wondering why, that's because the deity you pick at the beginning of the game slightly affects it, but I'll go into that whenever I get the time to do a character creation one, which is going to take a lot longer. I kind of want to wait till all of the character creation options are solidly in the game. Even though most of them are in, some of them aren't really attuned correctly, and there's still things that I believe are to be added. So I am going to wait on that till phase 4 most likely, because, you know, otherwise I'm going to have to make a lot, and those are long videos to make. So obviously just increases the amount of resistance you have to each of those elements. Nothing too special. Let's move on to offensive properties. Now offensive properties are, again, a really simple one. Accuracy and critical hit rate. Obviously certain classes need more accuracy and more critical hit rate than others. For example, Monk and Pugilist, they swing a lot more often, so accuracy is extremely crucial for them. They need to be able to land all their hits. Also Archer, due to their barrage spell, also need a lot of accuracy because that's a lot of extra damage added, especially in the later levels when it starts hitting 3 times an attack. And not to mention, if you have multi-hit weapon skills, you definitely want accuracy. And critical hit rate is just as important, but critical hit rate is really big on classes that hit once, because if they hit once and they hit hard, they hit a lot harder with the critical hit rate. But that's not to say all melee classes need accuracy and critical hit rate, and they need a lot of them. Now, the one that seems to throw people for a loop, and this is a new stat that a lot of people don't know about, and it's determination. I see this get asked a lot in shout chat already. People go, what does determination do? Why do I need determination? And very few people have an answer, but it's a very simple answer, and I actually just wanted to look to see if they changed it again. It increases the amount of damage dealt by all attacks. Now, there are base actions and there are attacks, so this increases everything. This increases your auto attacks, your anything that does damage. It increases your damage dealt. So it is even a stat for casters, essentially. Well, yeah, I guess you could say that. It's not really a mental property; it's an offensive property. So I'd say it's really more of a melee stat now. But if you see, I believe you see it on Magic Gear too. So I wouldn't completely say that falls out of line with it. So determination on gear, if it has your stats on it, is good. That's all I'm going to say. Increases the damage done by all attacks. And the amount of HP recovered by spell. So actually, you know, this seems more like a melee thing, you know, because now that I'm looking at it, this is definitely only a melee property, because it increases the amount of HP recovered by spells, not the amount of HP that your healing does. Amount of HP you receive from a heal. So this is a big. It's kind of strange that it's put under offensive properties only, because it helps tanks a lot. Determination helps tanks a lot. Imagine if the amount of determination, like if you were going to get a 90 heal and you were going to get hit for 100, but if you had determination, if you factor in determination, you were going to get 120 heal. It's pretty much like that, you know, you're going to be getting extra healing done on you by the determination. So word for word, it says, and the amount of HP recovered by spells. It doesn't say how much healing you do, but how much healing you receive. So it's a big stat altogether. It's a big one that you want on every piece of gear that you can find. I don't have any gear at level 1 that has it, as you can see, so it's at a crappy rating of 20. Next, you have defensive properties. These don't take too long. Defense, parry, and magic defense. Defense is how much damage you take from physical attacks. Parry is how often you parry, as you can see. Increases the probability that an attack will be blocked or parried. So parry does cover block and parry. It covers both of them. So it's a very simple stat to have to deal with. Now, and the last one's magic defense, how much damage you take from magical attacks. This one, you're going to have to balance out with your other defense, because they are 2 separate stats. You're going to have to make sure that you have a decent enough amount of both of them. Next, physical properties. You have attack power and skill speed. Now, this is another one that people don't really understand how it works. Now, attack power is pretty basic. How much, you know, damage your physical attacks do. Surprisingly, though, it is right here. Okay, yeah, damage dealt by physical attacks, you know. It's very, very basic. You know, there's not really much that needs to be said about that. But skill speed, something that people don't really know yet, right? Well, it reduces the recast time of weapon skills. Now, Some weapon skills have a recast time. Let's say it's 10 seconds, let's say it's 15 seconds, let's say it's 300 seconds. This reduces the recast time of those. So more often you can cast it, which is good because that means, hey, I have a 10-second weapon skill that I want to do every 8 seconds. I need more skill speed. That's how it works. Think of it like that. Very simple. Let's not waste too much more time on it. Let's move on to physical resistances, slashing, piercing, and blunt. Now, we haven't seen these really play too big into the game yet because they're all even. Even on this character, they're all even at 100. What the value actually means, it's hard to say, but we do know that if something does slashing damage, you want increased resistances to it. If something does piercing, you want increased resistance to it. And if something does blunt damage, you want increased resistances to it. Now, there are certain abilities in the game that reduce piercing and slashing and blunt resistances. Actually, I haven't seen one that decreases blunt resistances yet, but I'm sure there's got to be one, perhaps, almost, hopefully. So, it mainly takes place for enemies. You're gonna have to find out the individual properties of the enemies, which ones do which kind of damage. So you can know which property is the best, and there is gear that will increase these resistances. So just be prepared to stack even more defensive stats and have to have different sets of armor for different fights. It's definitely gonna feel that way. I don't know exactly how it's gonna play out though. To move on over to mental properties, this one's really easy. Attack magic potency increases your attack magic damage. Healing magic potency, how much you heal for. Simple. Couldn't be any harder, right? And then you have spell speed. Spell speed is let me just read it right from here. Why do anything else? Reduces the cast and recast time of spells. So now you have how quickly your spells cast and what the recast timers will be on. So if you have certain spells that have maybe a 10-second recast, it'll reduce that. But if they also have a 3-second cast time, it'll reduce that too. So it's a super important spell. It's a super important stat that all casters definitely need, especially healers. Now, you can't really, you gotta have a quick recast time when it comes to your big heals and your and some of the more important spells that you get in the game. So definitely a super important one. But that's all that needs to be said. Let's move on to the final stat, PvP property, morale. Now, PvP is not available yet, so morale is essentially at 0. But this is, and a lot of players aren't gonna like this. A lot of people are not gonna like this, I promise you. It is, if you've played World of Warcraft, it is resilience. It reduces the damage done from other player attacks. So it is a defensive stat strictly for PvP, as labeled here. It does not work anywhere else in the game except in PvP. When PvP gear starts coming out, you'll see people with higher morale. That's what it does. I'm not going to comment any further on that because this could become a heated debate. And that is essentially what the entire character pane does. Those are what all your stats do. And I think now you can kind of figure out how you want to balance them and what you kind of want for each character. Where you want strength, dex, vitality, where you want int, mind, and piety, how much determination you want as much as possible, and how skill speed and spell speed affect the game. Those are stats that are pretty new and that a lot of people might not understand. So if you like this video, if you thought this video was helpful, please like, favorite, subscribe, and share. If you have friends who don't really know what stats they want to build into or what the stats even do, send this to them and they should understand a little bit better about how it works. Also, go to my Facebook at www.facebook.com/MrHappy1227. Link is in the description below. You can go there and ask me any questions. If you have a request for a video, I take requests because, what else am I doing? This information is not for me. I know what it is. This is for you guys. So thank you for watching and hope you have a good weekend.